Okay, I need to know the common denominator if you're dealing with two fractions that you're trying to add together, 1 over 5 and 1 over 6. What's the common denominator? 30. 30 is correct. Now, the reason that you have to multiply them together is because if you write out the factors for 6, 5 is already a prime number. You realize that they have nothing in common. So you are forced to multiply them together to get 30. And so eventually in this lesson, we'll be talking about things like, okay, what does this 5 denominator not have that the other one has? Now, you can either say 2 and 3, or you could say 6. It would not matter to me. So if you said 2 and 3, which I'm sure none of you would have to multiply the top by the same thing. What's the other one missing that the first one has? Come on, what's this other side missing that the left side has? It's missing a 5, so you'd have to multiply the top and the bottom by 5. So this is what you did in middle school. You got common denominators, right? Then you had a 6 plus 6 over 30 plus 5 over 30. Now, when you had those two things written out like that and you went to add them together, what did you do to the bottom? Kept it the same. Thank you very much. Is that exactly what we do when we multiply two fractions together like we did on Friday? No, because in multiplication we go straight across the top and straight across the bottom. But in addition and subtraction, we have to get common denominators. Then we can add the numerators, but we leave the denominators alone. Do you know how many kids mess that up over? You know, they think we should be getting common denominators all the time.
The last time we did that was in middle school.
Right.
We haven't used it at all.
True. But it comes back to you guys pretty quickly. All right, now, if I asked you to come up with the smallest number in the universe, called the least common multiple, abbreviated LCM, for these two numbers, 4 and 8, what is the smallest number in the universe that both of them go into?
2.
Now, 16 is a number that both of them go into. It is not, however, the smallest. And the other option that you gave me, 2, 4 and 8 do not go into 2. So somebody who's thinking about 2 is thinking about a factor. 8 is the smallest number in the universe that 4 and 8 both go into. So the least common multiple is 8. Now, why did that happen? Why is it that the least common multiple is one of those two numbers you were given? Yes? Because 4 is already inside of 8. 4 is built into 8. Yes. Yes, very.
So I'm on that 4th grade brain.
Yes. Now, before we can find the least common multiple of these two rational expressions, we need to factor them. Now, the one I'm highlighting there in the green is as simple and as factored as it'll ever get. It's already a linear term. But the other one is not. So what are you going to do to factor this? What can you pull out? You can pull out a GCF, right? That would give me w squared minus what?
4.
But is that something that can be factored further?
Yes.
Okay, what does it break down into?
W minus 2.
Yep, w minus 2.
W minus 2.
W plus 2, right? Okay, now, if we're building a least common multiple, now, I always tell kids when you're building a least common multiple, start with one of them. It doesn't matter which one you start with. So you're either going to start with this, or you're going to start with this. Which one should we start with? And Mr. Elkert, I'm going to give you your choice. Which one would you like to start with? Okay, so he said we want to start with w plus 2. Okay, now, what does the other one have that we are missing? Yeah, we're missing a 3. Yep. What else are we missing? a W minus 2. Now, had he started with the other one,
Whoa, bro.
had he started with the other one, he would have been finished.
That's cheese.
And that goes back to what Mr. Barr was talking about a second ago when he said that 8 was the least common multiple because 4 already went into it. Okay? Was divided in evenly. That doesn't always happen. It doesn't always happen that one of them is the least common multiple.
Which one's
The one that we.
Oh, it's just that full thing.
It's that full thing. I'm going to do question 3 first, and then we'll go back to question 2. Do those have the same denominator?
Yes.
Okay.
8 over 4.
So we don't mess with the bottom, but we do add the 2 things on the top, and since they're like terms, that would be 8 over 4y. But it can be simplified. That's good. 2 over y. That's right. I've decided that instead of that I'm going to limit what we're being asked to do. I'm not going to ask you that state any restrictions on the variable. I will not ask you about the restrictions on the variable. Okay, so you see that instruction right there stating the restrictions on the variable. That I'm going to throw out as an instruction there. I'm more interested, do you know that you can add them together, that you're not changing the denominator, and can you reduce it? Okay, back to question 2. Do they have the same denominator?
Yes.
So, if they already have the same denominator, we leave it alone, but now we can add the numerators together. 2y plus 3 plus y plus 1. All right, so what happens there? Combine like terms, right? How many y's do we have on the top? 3. And we have a plus 4 and a y minus 7, so there's my final answer. Now I'm just curious, B is the correct answer here down here, and we would put our 3y plus 4, y minus 7. I'm not going to ask you to be that specific, but why is this the correct answer, and what would you put here? If I did ask for that, maybe that would be an extra credit thing.
Y cannot equal
What's the one thing?
+7.
+7, thank you very much. That is the only thing in the universe which would cause massive explosions.
I used your Snapple joke twice yesterday.
Pretty good, wasn't it?
Wait, what's that?
I've been using it.
What's that?
Oh, you were here. What's Thanos' favorite drink? Diet Snapple. But you got to snap your finger when you do it, okay?
It has to be your left hand.
And then, oh, it does?
Because Thanos' gauntlet is on the left hand.
Oh.
Wait, is it?
No, it's on
Alright,
the right.
as you know, tomorrow this is the last day that people can't say spoilers, but tomorrow
Oh, wait.
is free reign.
No, the kids all told me fourth period that it was up today.
No, it's tomorrow.
Oh my goodness, those liars. I just thought it was plain old rude in case somebody hasn't seen it, you know.
No, it's been a whole week, man. If you haven't seen it, it sucks for you.
And $2.2 billion in 1 week? I'm like, holy
It's
cow.
the 5th or
Hey.
4th gross movie.
It's so Staley. Have you
Yes.
seen this?
Not sure.
Go to Google real quick. Go to Google.
Look at this.
If
If
you
you go to
go
Thanos,
to
if you look at Thanos like that and snap it, it makes everything disappear.
Yeah, what? So if you type in Google or on Google Thanos,
Go to
right?
Google
Go
and
to
type in
Google.
Thanos.
Go to Google. Okay, we're recording this, folks.
Why you have so many
Because I have important things I need to go.
Delete all those tabs.
Here's the horrifying thing.
Click on it. Click on it.
So,
And it'll scroll down.
It was scrolling.
oh my goodness. Nope, it didn't do anything to my tabs. Alright. Whoa, oh, things started disappearing. That was kind of cool.
Press function Alt F4. That is not what you should do.
Okay, we don't listen to that kid. Okay, now, I need to get common denominators. What can you factor out of x squared minus 8x? GCF, what do you got? X, thank you very much. If I pull an x out, what am I left with? Hopefully you're writing this stuff down. What can you pull out of the second denominator? 8. And if you pull out an 8, you're left with x minus 8. Okay, folks. What is the first denominator missing that the second one has?
64.
Oh,
It's got an x and it's got an x minus 8. Looks like it's missing an 8. So top and bottom, I multiply by 8. What is the second denominator missing that the first one has? X, top and bottom. I'm hoping that the colors help you understand.
it's kind of hard when you don't
Yes,
have colors.
it's true. It's true. Okay, so we have 64.
Over 8x.
Well, here's what we're going to do. We'll leave that 8x and x minus 8. I don't want you to waste your time and multiply that together on the bottom. But I do want you to simplify the top. What do you have? 64 minus what?
X.
X squared. Now, if you give me this answer on the test, which will probably is either going to be Thursday or Friday, I'm going to give you full credit. If you can follow what I'm about to do, you'll get extra credit. This actually can be reduced. There's kind of a dirty trick going on here in the numerator, which is why I wouldn't expect you to do this. If you pull out that negative, you get x squared minus 64. Keep writing stuff down as we go. Unless you're just ignoring this because you don't want to do the extra credit, which is fine. I can understand that part. But you should be able to answer this next question. How does x squared minus 64 factor? X minus 8 and x plus 8. Yep. And so on the bottom we have 8x and we have x minus 8. Ah, we see some canceling, don't we? Now if you got that, if you ended up giving me this final answer, I would definitely be giving you extra credit. But you do not have to go the distance on that one. If you want to stop with the full credit answer and not go to this extra credit version, I understand. Because really and truthfully to me, getting the common denominators and being able to add those numerators together correctly, that's the most important part to me. Whether you can see all that reducing all the way to the end, that would be fabulous, but not necessary. Question 5. Factor those denominators. Factor those denominators. Okay, so there's the full credit version and the extra credit version on this. You're more than welcome to go for the extra credit if you want, but you don't have to. That dirty little trick right there where they multiply, they pull out a -1 from the top. That's kind of an evil trick. We moved on to question 5, and we factored those denominators and found what they were missing. Do not waste your time and multiply that. So do not multiply those things together. That would not be a good use of your time. So now they're distributing the 2x and the -7x. Watch that it's a negative. And try to distribute that, and we'll see if we can add like terms here. Yeah, I saw him steal a base, but I didn't hear any more about it. Okay, so it looks like we get -5x squared and -45x. Now, Mr. Morris asked me a good question, and
What's
sorry, gotta unfreeze it. Mr. Morris asked me a good question. He said, could we pull a negative 5x out of the top? And the answer is yes, but it won't do me any good. If I do that, if I pull a negative 5x out of the top, that's going to give me x plus 9. Now, does anything cancel out? Something from the top and something from the bottom? Answer no. So even though it's a good idea, maybe he was trying to go for some extra credit. And there's nothing wrong for trying to get for some extra credit. It just didn't work out in this situation. That's as good as it gets.
Isn't that its least term or whatever it's called?
Yes, that is its reduced form. Yeah, there's nothing you could do with that. You could pull out the negative 5x, but it's just not going to help you. Okay, now, we'd like to get rid of, these are called complex fractions, and they're fractions within inside of fractions, and I would really like to get rid of those. So I suggest we find a number that's in common to all these denominators. I see a 1, I see a 6, I see a 1, I see a 5. What's the common denominator between the least one? Between all of those, 1, 6, 1, and 5. I got to have a number that they all go into. 30, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to multiply the top by 30 and the bottom by 30. If we multiply the top and the bottom by 30, that will be okay because you haven't changed. What's 30 times 3? What's 30 times 1/6? Well, that's the same thing as saying 1 over 6 times 30 over 1. And 30 over 6 is 5, right? So we automatically know that the top of this fraction is 95. How about 30 times 2? 60. 30 times negative 2/5, for those of you who don't know what that is, it would look like this. How many times does 5 go into 30? 6 times, and what is negative 2 times 6? Negative 12. So what is the denominator now?
48.
48. We have to find a common denominator, and so far I have had people struggling with number 7, so we're going to go to number 8 and then we'll come back to number 7, see if that helps. What's the common denominator between all of these denominators? In the last example, you said 5 and 6 don't have anything in common, so you decided to multiply them together and get 30. W and X have nothing in common, so what are you forced to do? You're forced to multiply them together. So we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by WX over 1. Well, just like with the 5 and the 6, we didn't know what to do because they had nothing in common, so we multiplied them together and got 30. So we decided, I don't see anything in common between W and X, I'll just multiply them together. And since we're doing it to the top and the bottom, nothing will be, we're just going to change the form of what this looks like. So what happens when you take WX over 1 times 8 over W? Anything cancel? 8x, because the W's cancel. And if we multiply that times that, the x's cancel, leaving you 5w. Good call. Do the same thing on the bottom. This times this. 5x minus 8w. Now, ask the question. Somebody in this room is going to ask me the same question that somebody asked me first period and somebody asked me fourth period.
You cannot find like
No?
You can't cancel it.
No, you can't. You're right. Don't even try. question that they asked me. Okay, now they use the phrase cross multiplication, which kind of hurts down deep inside because it's not a proportion. But I do understand what's going on in their minds. The reason that you can do this and this, there's only one reason that works. Because W and X share nothing in common. It's no different than if I go to the top of the screen where we had the example with the 1 over 5 plus the 1 over 6. All the way at the very top. Some of you would say to me, well, Mr. Staley, well, why can't I just do this times this and this times this? That works because they have nothing in common. So, that's true, it would work in this situation. But the reality is you're multiplying by the common denominator Wx. That's what's giving you your final answer. Now, go back to question 7. What's the common denominator? I see a denominator of x minus 12, and I see a denominator of 1, and I see a denominator of x minus 12. What is the common denominator? X minus 12. No, you're right. It doesn't do anything. So I'm going to multiply this by x minus 12 over x minus 12. This is question 7. What happens when you take this times this? What do you get? 1. You're right, they cancel out. What do you get when you take this times 1? X minus 12, yep. And then what do you get when you take this times this thing? It'd be very careful. You're very, very close. Minus 1. You forgot the negative in front. You had the right idea, though, with the canceling. So what's my final answer? 1 over? X minus 13. Thank you very much. Now, this question's not going to be on your test, okay? But it's an interesting question. Woman drives an SUV that gets 12 miles per gallon. Her husband drives a hybrid that gets 50 miles per gallon. Every week, they travel the same number of miles. They want to improve their combined gas mileage. They have 2 options on how they can improve it. 1, they can tune the SUV and increase its mileage by 2 miles per gallon and keep the hybrid as it is. 2, they can buy a new hybrid that gets 85 miles per gallon and keep the SUV as it is. Which option will give them a better combined miles per gallon? We want total miles over total gallons. Yes.
But you'd add an extra 2, so that'd be 64. But if you get option 2, which is 85 miles per gallon, that already beats it.
Okay, so let's see what happens here. Option number 1. Now, total miles. He drives X number of miles, and so does she. Now, the total number of gallons of gas that he uses is miles divided by miles per hour, or miles per gallon, I should say. That's his number of gallons of gas that he uses every week. Now, if her SUV is getting improved, instead of X over 12, it's going to be X over what? 14. Now, that's option number 1. Option number 2, x plus x, that's not changing. What's changing is instead of having a 50 mile per gallon, now he's got an 85 mile per gallon, and she's got the 12. Now, in both cases, we have 2x in the top. So option number 1 and option number 2. The big question is what's going on in the bottom? What's the common denominator between 50 and 14? Now you could do this without, if you really wanted to be lazy, you could do this. You could do 14 times this one and 50 times that one. If we really wanted to be just flat out lazy, right? It doesn't mean we have to come up, so we could have 14x plus 50x. What's 14 times 50? Anybody got a machine? 14 times 50. I think it's going to be about 700. 700?
Yeah.
Okay. And we could do the same thing on the other one. 12x plus 85x. What's 12 times 85? 12 times 85. What is it? 1020. Okay, help me simplify these a little bit. (2x) over, what's this thing right here? 64x divided by 700. And over here we have 2x divided by 97x divided by 1020. Now, you're right, the x's are canceling out. That is a good observation. So, really, we could get rid of these and look at it as 2 divided by 64 over 700, which is the same thing as 2 times 700 over 64. And right, those x's are getting rid of over there too. So I can either write it as 2 divided by 97 over 1020, or 2 times 1020 over 97. What do we get for option number 1? 2 times 700 over 64. 21.875. And what do we get for option 2? 21.03. So it would be cheaper. They would get better combined fuel efficiency if they tuned up the SUV and increased it by 2 miles a gallon instead of buying the new hybrid.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
So if they're willing to get a new hybrid, why can't they just sell the SUV and get 2 hybrids?
Well, they need to have one family vehicle that can put everybody in.
Get a hybrid SUV.
Hey, there's lots of ways to shoot holes in this.
Yes.
Because you're willing to buy a whole new car, just to save some money, so
Drive your car less.
yeah, you could do that. Just stay home.
Take Uber.
I have a battery die at work.
Yeah. Saturday. Is that what you did?